Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I was younger, Interstellar was always my favorite movie, and I just recently rewatched it probably for the first time in 3 years, about a week ago, and what an amazing movie it is. It's very sad, and I've said this before a lot. They really don't make movies like they used to. When is the last time we've seen a huge budget space movie that was really good? I mean, you've got Interstellar, you've got The Martian in the span of like 2 or 3 years. Where's the next one? Just give us a nice space exploration video where they go to different planets. That's all we want. But Interstellar is like, I mean, it is the culmination of everything. They send astronauts to exoplanets to try and see if they could potentially house human life. The Lazarus missions, where they go to 10 different planets. One astronaut goes through the wormhole, which does not exist. They had to kind of just, it's always been a sci-fi make-believe thing that people have talked about. I do wonder if we'll ever be able to artificially create one ourselves. I highly doubt it. You know, it's interesting in the movie, and let me just get to the overall point of this video. I'm going to go through all the different planets that they explored, and then there's like one they were thinking about putting in the movie, but they didn't. So that'll be at the end. But the story goes in Interstellar in 2019, so like 5 years ago in terms of modern times, they would have found the wormhole outside of Saturn, and that's obviously where Cooper and Romley and Doyle and Brand all went to. They had the cryosleep chambers. It was about a 2-year journey. Obviously, right now, we don't have the technology, we don't have the boosters to get to Saturn in 2 years that would be developed because they went in the year 2067, I believe. I do wonder, I mean, in terms of 2067, why not make it like 2100 or 2150? Because the idea that Earth would go through this blight period, it really doesn't make a lot of sense because Cooper, or I guess Matthew McConaughey, said in the movie that when he was a kid, people were fighting over food. So I believe he was born in the movie in 2035. I don't remember exactly, but he was pretty young when he left on the Endurance to go on this mission. But I'm going to talk about the planets. So the first planet, Miller's Planet, quite honestly, I'm very surprised they actually explored it. Just the risk is not worth the reward. Even trying to get human life onto there based on the time dilation, I don't think it's worth it considering how close it is to the black hole, which made the time dilation happen in the first place. I do think it's one of the coolest things in any movie ever. 1 hour on Miller's Planet is equal to 7 years on Earth. And I believe the original estimates, they only wanted to spend 5 to 10 minutes on Miller's Planet. Obviously, it was a complete mess. In reality, there's no way that Brand, who's a very good, knowledgeable scientist, you know, you see that massive wave, which, by the way, apparently it's not a tsunami, it's a tidal wave, and it's happening because people were saying, how does a wave get that big from shallow water? Seems like Miller's Planet is just filled with water. It's like a water planet, but it's all shallow, at least from what we could see. I mean, maybe there were some deeper parts. It's not a sphere, by the way, the planet. It's shaped apparently like an egg, which is just very odd, but it's not a tsunami, it's a tidal wave that's produced from being very close to the black hole. And so when they get to Miller's Planet, they kind of start dragging around when they get into the water. Well, it's already hard to walk in knee-deep water, but it was at 130% Earth's gravity, which is miserable, in comparison to Mann's planet, which is 80%. That's one thing that Mann's planet had going for it. But when it comes to Miller's, I mean, let's be honest, you see that massive wave, what's the point of retrieving the data? It makes no sense to get that data at that point. If you've got, you know, waves that high, I mean, maybe like 10 times higher than any wave on Earth. I actually did get curious once, maybe like a year ago. I wanted to find the biggest tsunami on Earth, and it was actually kind of a letdown. This is what we have recorded. I've always wondered, were there bigger tsunamis when the dinosaurs were around? Maybe like 2 or 3 times the height, but apparently the biggest tsunami was from like part of a mountain range, like falling into an inlet, and just for like a second it was just gigantic apparently. But this was probably like maybe the 1800s or something, I don't remember exactly. I think it was in maybe Alaska. But yeah, I mean, that wave, you see that wave, it's, I mean, they had to do it for the movie. They had to let the time pass, and then they go back 23 years. But, you know, you let the ship drain. I mean, they almost didn't make it out with the second wave coming. But another interesting thing, when it comes to Miller, the original doctor or the original scientist that was going to go to the planet and did touch down and obviously reported that there was water on it, the beacon did, she probably died from the wave that Brand saw. going away from them, because she first said it was mountains, because you don't really track it. You could kind of understand why she would say it's mountains, but you could tell that the wave was going away from them, and that's what Matthew McConaughey said. But then he looked out the other side of the ship and he saw the next one coming. But because of the time slippage, she probably died 5-10 minutes before they, or maybe I think it was 15 minutes before they got there. It's pretty crazy to think about. And then obviously Doyle, I think they just needed him to die for the movie. The dude looked shell-shocked. It doesn't make much sense. I mean, he was just standing there and he's like, "Tars, go get her." Well, and he just continues to stand there. But I think they just had to have him die at that point. So, yeah, Miller's Planet, obviously completely unlivable, but interesting nonetheless. Kind of like a shallow ocean water world that has massive tidal waves based off of it being very close to a black hole. And then the next planet, this is probably the one, yeah, this is the one they were on the most, and this was kind of like the showcase exoplanet that they visited. It was Dr. Mann's. They had that decision between Edmunds or Mann, and I mean, the decision was, they never showed, because it was 1-1. Obviously, Brand wanted to go because she was in love with Edmunds, and the data was very promising, but he had died. We later learned from a rock slide, and I mean, the planet was habitable. You could tell at the end of the movie there was not a lot on it. I'll talk about it towards the end of this video. It looks like, from my opinion, Edmunds Planet looks like a livable Mars. That would be my best explanation of Edmunds Planet, because you could breathe there, but I'll talk about it later. But Mann's Planet was like the showcase. Obviously, Matt Damon randomly shows up. I don't even think they had Matt Damon in the trailers or anything like that. But the one big, movie poster that they had, it was McConaughey at Mann's Planet, and that was definitely the one where the exoplanet they were at the longest. So they get there. Obviously, Mann decided to lie about all the data on the planet. I mean, you just gotta think, this is what I was thinking about, Mann just flying in and having one look at all the frozen clouds and just being like, well, that's it. My life's over. I mean, seriously, you go to some of these spots. I mean, but they had to have the planet scouted out to a degree, right? With the technology that you'd think they'd have, where they could see planets past, the wormhole. And even today, we can kind of scout planets out, and we know which planets are like freezing cold, which planets potentially could have life. So you would think that Mann would probably know that the planet was going to be cold, or I don't know, maybe he didn't. I don't know what technology they had exactly, but he gets there and then he gets pissed off. People were saying that, well, he was, very crazy at the time. He had spent, 23 years on that planet alone. I believe he only spent probably 1 year on the planet without sleeping. I mean, you get there and you start doing tests and you start looking for a surface, and there was no surface. It's just a bunch of floating, giant frozen clouds. And Kip, the robot, just like Tars or Case, he had Kip, had all this information saved. The planet just, I mean, if they would have sent this information back to Endurance, they would have just completely bypassed it because it was not good data in terms of livability. But he ended up, I guess, decommissioning Kip and using a lot of his energy for the cryo sleep so he could survive, and also replacing all the data and sending it out, I guess, on a beacon, saying they had really good data, saying there was this, I guess, Eden under all these frozen clouds. And then they end up going there instead of Edmunds. They were lower on fuel than they originally intended to be, because they had spent, well, technically the Endurance had spent 23 hours while they were on Miller's Planet. So they end up going to Mann's Planet, and it is just a bunch of frozen clouds. It does not have a surface, apparently. It is just frozen clouds. Now, when I originally watched this, and I saw them flying in, and I saw them hit a frozen cloud, I was like, wow. But I didn't think the entire planet was just frozen clouds. Like, I thought it had a surface, like where they landed and where they were walking. But apparently, it's just all frozen clouds. And so they start walking around the planet. Mann shows his data, it's all fakes, and then he ends up trying to kill Matthew McConaughey. Part of the movie, he breaks open his helmet, can't breathe the air. Obviously, Mann's planet is completely uninhabitable, and it is remarkable how these planets work, and even how the Earth works, because we think, oh, it's 1 in a million. Well, even the Earth, for a long period of time was not livable. So there's such this sweet spot for life to happen and really thrive. And at some point in the future, I mean, at that point, it's not going to matter. They've given us everything in terms of human beings having the ability to evolve on Earth. We're going to have millions and millions of years, we would think, unless something happens, which you never know. But millions and millions and millions. Think of how long the dinosaurs survived before the asteroid, and that's going to enable us hopefully to become a multi-planetary species, create different things that can get us to places extremely quickly, and develop other planets outside of our solar system, because we're going to have a long time to be able to do that. But it's still just a sweet spot. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong on a planet that could make it uninhabitable. And obviously, man got a very not a great planet in terms of that. It's not terrible. I mean, you could land on it. 80% gravity. That's probably the best. That is the best part of it, is 80% gravity. That's why they were able to like walk really easily and during the fight, and then they were able to kind of use those boosters to get up on rocks and stuff. That's probably like a nod to 80% gravity. 80% of Earth's gravity makes it easier to move. You feel lighter, but it's not too light. It's like the perfect situation in terms of that. But obviously, Mann's planet, just a total frozen world, very, very cold during the day, very cold at night. Also interesting, 67-hour days, 67 hours nights. So it rotates very slowly as well. And I mean, it was a little bit light out. It kind of looked like, the clouds looked like it was like, Alaska or something, like some type of tundra. That's what I would kind of relate it to. And then we have the third planet, which is Edmunds Planet, which is the one that Brand originally wanted to go to. She has a relationship with Edmunds, and that's why Matthew McConaughey didn't want it. And then Romilly, I guess, voted with McConaughey. That's why they went to Mann's first. But then McConaughey and Tars sacrificed themselves. And it's also crazy how McConaughey, or I got Cooper and Tars, they got zero credit. They literally saved the human species. At least that's according to this movie, based on how they were able to transmit that data. Really, without Tars, there's no way Cooper would have been able to do it. And same thing. So it's just crazy how they were the two ones that saved everyone, and Cooper wakes up and they almost like make fun of him when he thinks the station is named after him, and then you just see Tars disregarded. Like, I don't know why they rebuilt his it's almost like a movie scene when he wakes up on Cooper Station, and then they build him like this memorial with an exact replica of his house, and then he goes in the house and there's Tars just completely mangled. By that point, they've got way better robots than him, because it's like 100 years later since they started the mission, and it's like nobody knows that those two actually saved the human species, and his daughter gets all the credit. I just find that interesting. But Edmunds Planet, they utilize the slingshot because they didn't have enough fuel. Brand is allowed to go there. Tars and Cooper detach themselves, and again, I would say Edmunds Planet, it looks like a livable Mars. I mean, Mars in itself can be kind of livable. It'll do because it's so close, and I think that's where we're probably going to head, at least at the start of exploring other planets, just because, Mars is definitely not perfect, but it's not like Venus. So I think it's probably like a livable Mars, although we didn't get much of a look at the planet of Edmunds. But again, it does look like it's livable. She took off her helmet. She could breathe the air there. So, I mean, it looks very nice, to be honest. And then there was another planet that was unnamed. This was in the Interstellar text adventure game, and there's only one artist rendering of what it potentially would look like. It kind of looks like Titan, which is probably the most famous moon outside of our own in our solar system. It is one of Saturn's moons. So there is that little Easter egg as well. But that is just the three main exoplanets that were explored. They barely spent any time on Miller's. It was unlivable. They spent a lot of time on Mann's. It was also unlivable. And then at the end of the movie, it does show Edmunds. So possibly one of 10 of the Lazarus astronauts found a livable planet, but even he died. Edmunds did as well. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.